Welcome back, College Baseball Central fans. We got a special edition here. We're going to talk Texas A&M and Oregon Duck baseball. We're getting into this super regional matchup. Jake McKeever's here with me. Obviously, he's got a lot of A&M experience. He's been to a lot of their games. I've probably seen the Ducks more than most people in the country. So I would say I have a large knowledge of the Duck baseball program, and it's just going to be a great weekend series. Cannot wait. This one starts on Saturday. Jake, how we doing today, man?
I'm excited, Mark. We finally get to do a show without Noah or Monty. I know
Yeah.
we've been trying
We
to
did we
see.
did one. We did one
Oh
weekend
yeah,
rotation.
we
It's
did
just the
that
two of
one.
us.
Yeah, but we've been looking for ways to collaborate, and I guess the 20 that we slipped Matt Hogue to get us a West Coast Texas Super Regional ended up panning out. So just excited to kind of talk through and see just the different styles between Texas and Oregon and what each team does really, really well.
Yeah, and mentioned on the show yesterday, this is a power versus power. Or Oregon's pitching staff coming down to play at Texas A&M against just a terrific lineup. Now Oregon has some hitters of themselves. Let's not kid ourselves. These are two of the top 16 teams in the country right now. But it's power of the pitching versus the power of the lineup there, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it yesterday. Everybody that's in a super regional is good. Oregon, they're undefeated. They rolled through their regional.
Yeah.
Texas A&M obviously kind of did theirs as well. Two power teams. Honestly, they took very different paths here. As Oregon, was the 3 seed, a little bit underseeded, had a little chip on their shoulder. A&M was that national 4 seed who got bounced early in the SEC. So really, just excited to kind of talk through the matchups here, just because I know a lot of my listeners with Texas A&M don't understand Oregon baseball. And then a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, really don't follow Texas A&M very close.
Yeah, it's fair. And when you look at it, it's really weird. Three teams only from the Pac-12 made it, right? Two of them are in super regionals this weekend, and they're
Two
all
of them
40-win
were in
teams.
Oregon too.
Yeah, I mean, two Oregon
There's just
teams
a big
representing.
gap between. I think too. I looked it up that other than Oregon State, which is the elephant in the room, this is the closest place that Oregon could go. So Texas A&M is the second closest place and the closest
Yep.
outside of Oregon from an opponent standpoint. It's the closest one from a distance standpoint of one who's hosting. So
Yep.
Oregon got a really really tough draw, and they're still traveling halfway across the country, but they could very easily be going to Kentucky like your Beavers, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Oregon State makes it, right? They host, they do what they're supposed to do, they win. They got to go to Lexington. They got to go across the country to play. It's tough. It's tough out the West Coast this year. They had the host sites. Oregon went down and beat UCSB. They beat San Diego. They took care of some really good teams down there. And I know A&M did the same thing, but they were at home. So Oregon's already been a little battle tested here in this playoff set.
Yeah, and ironically, hopefully their season doesn't start and end in the same place. But Oregon does return to Texas as they opened up in Arlington that opening weekend. I know personally, I really didn't want to go to Arlington that opening weekend, but it ended up kind of being a tremendous field with Nebraska making the tournament, Oklahoma making the tournament, Oregon and Tennessee are both playing in the Super Regionals. So I am feeling just a little bit of buyer's remorse with that. So hopefully next year when they get a good field, I'll trust the officiators a little bit more than I did, so I could have got to see Oregon this season.
And one of the teams that we thought for sure were like, oh, they're the best team in the thing, Texas Tech, didn't even make the tournament. We're like, Texas
Yeah,
Tech's the best team in
they
Arlington.
weren't even snubbed. That was the even
No.
crazier part.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
all knew
everybody?
going in they weren't in.
They've had a the portal's kind of been their biggest surprise. Everybody seems to kind of just a mass exodus away from Tim Tadlock. But
Yeah.
I mean, credit to the Arlington people for having the foresight to kind of see Oregon, and then Oregon scheduling wise, it's probably going to be a very very similar flight path from
Yeah.
Eugene to College Station as opposed to Eugene to Arlington. So a little bit of familiarity. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room because I think this is where me and Mark kind of differ. I think the heat is going to play a huge, huge factor. Oregon obviously hasn't played anybody close at the heat as they've kind of lived in the Pacific Northwest for about the last month. They played Washington, Utah, a lot of home games. They played Arizona, who would be probably their biggest test at home. Arizona State, they played early March. Mark, you mentioned that a lot of these kids are SoCal kids, Nevada kids, that they probably
Yeah.
played in this heat. Do you think a lot of the national media is kind of playing that up, or do you think that the heat is going to be a very, very real issue?
So here's the thing. They all season they haven't really played in the heat, right? So you do lose a little bit of that. But these kids know what to expect. They're gonna hydrate, they're gonna be ready. This staff's gonna have them ready. I think that the heat might play a bigger thing if this was a different type of tournament, right? But you're talking 2 out of 3. You only got to get up for 3 games. This ain't a big long haul weekend where you got to go double elimination. It'd be harder if this was a regional for them to go down there and play a double elimination and not know when your games are. They know exactly when they're playing. They know the schedule. It's 2 out of 3. Go win 2 games. You're in. I think that makes a big difference. But the Heat will play, especially with this pitching staff that hasn't had to pitch in it much.
Yeah, that 2 p.m. Saturday game is, I think, where we kind of see that. A&M's obviously going with Ryan Prager, the lefty with the sub 1 NRA. Has Oregon announced a starter yet, Mark?
They have not, but they're going to go RJ Gordon. I mean, RJ Gordon is their Friday night guy. 4.73 ERA, 7-5 on the season. He's had the 16 starts. He's been their leader. He's thrown the 91 in a third innings. He's their guy, right? They go out, they lead on him, and he's been really good the last few weeks of the season. He's been terrific on Friday nights for the Ducks.
What would you say kind of his MLB comp is? Is he going to be around 95? How does he kind of tend to
He's
pitch?
low 90s. He throws 4 pitches for strikes. That's the big thing for him is that he mixes it up in the zone. So he'll throw you a curveball. He'll throw that curveball, start you off, and he'll get after it and get over the plate. He likes to get ahead of hitters, but he likes to do that with breaking stuff. He doesn't have to throw the fastball down the middle to get you right immediately. He's the guy that will mix it up, and he's really experienced, right? He's been there for a long time. Senior player. He's ready to go. He is set up and set himself in this position to be their Friday night ace.
Yeah, that's tremendous. I know when I watched that start that he had in the regional, it seemed like he kind of faced a little bit more of a free swinging team with Texas A&M. Obviously, they kind of love to grind it out, 2-2, 3-2 counts, a lot of that. So it's gonna be interesting to see because he was so on the offensive. If that's gonna be something that remains when they face Texas A&M, or if they kind of change that up. For Texas A&M, obviously it's Ryan Prager.
Yep.
Um, the best pitcher in the SEC, not named Hagen Smith,
Yeah.
actually outdueled Hagen Smith when they went against him. 90s guy, really kind of all over the plate in a good way. Curveball for strikes. He's got a changeup as well. I think that that's going to be kind of a really, really tough matchup for Oregon there. Moving on to the Saturday guy, A&M's announced Shane Stejo. Obviously, there was no surprises there. Are we kind of expecting surprises with Oregon's number 2, or do they
Nope, they're
kind of
gonna
have one
go.
locked in?
They're gonna go Grayson Grinsell, right? So he's been their Saturday guy all year. He's a lefty, big, tall lefty kid, throws strikes. He's got a lot of good breaking stuff. He had 13 starts this year, and it's 3.82 ERA, 7-2 in the overall record. He's got a lot of good stuff, and A&M has struggled against lefties. So this is a tough matchup there for them. I think Grinsell's really the guy that's going to give them the most fit on that Sunday game for Oregon.
Yep, A&M's obviously going to counter with Shane Stejo, who's a lefty. With Texas A&M playing a lefty, I think that it is a very, very underrated lineup in that aspect that they kind of struggle against lefties because it
Yeah.
makes Braden Montgomery and Jackson Appel turn around bat from the right side. Their numbers are a little bit down. I'd have to pull the splits. Caden Sorrell, I know he really struggled at lefties, and he's gotten a lot better. But again, you'd much rather see him face a righty. Hayden Schott's left-handed. Jace Lavallette's left-handed. So I mean, it really is kind of a good matchup against the lefty because again, A&M it's kind of a little bit of a catch-22 because they faced Hagen Smith, and they faced some really really talented lefty arms. You don't know if those are kind of skewed, but again, I think that that's going to be something to really kind of track is how A&M can kind of handle the lefties.
Yeah, and I think Grayson Grinsell's a different kind of left hand. He's over the top. He has good splits versus lefties. He also does good against right-handed hitters. He doesn't really fall off against right-handed hitters, which is something a lot of lefties kind of leave more stuff over the plate for righties. He's really good against both sides. He's been a terrific pitcher down the stretch again. This Duck staff has just gotten better all year. Like they started off, they did great in Arlington, and then they kind of hit a little couple doldrums there in the beginning of that season in March. They have picked up. This staff has gotten so good. Now they're throwing deep into ball games. All these guys can go 7, 8, 9 innings, which is really troublesome for opposing teams, especially if they're on.
Yeah, I mean that really shortens the game if you can have a starter go that far into the game. It seems like every single coach is chasing outs more than pitch counts. If you can get a guy who can get you 21 of 27, I think you're going to be set up to win a lot of games.
Yeah,
Does Oregon have a normal number 3? Has it been kind of a
yeah,
trial
they
by
do.
committee?
Kevin Sider. This guy is a transfer in from Winnipeg. Really great, or great arm for Sundays, right? He goes out there. He was terrific in that third start against UCSB and shut them down. He threw 8 innings of shutout ball. He gave up one run there in the ninth, but he was really good all day long. He was terrific there for this Oregon Duck team. He went out there, throws strikes, doesn't strike people out, right? He beats up the zone. So if they get to that Monday game against A&M, A&M is going to have to be out there free swinging a little bit because this guy beats up the zone, but he doesn't strike people out. He doesn't. He's not going to burn you. He's just going to throw a lot of strikes and make you hit ground balls.
That was the one thing that really jumped out to me when I watched that UCSB game, and then obviously when I went back and looked at it again, was just how low his pitch count was. It seemed
Yep.
like there were a ton of 1-0 weak ground balls. So that'll be something that to kind of track. Does A&M kind of change their approach? Do they go more free swinging, or do they kind of stick with it and trust the numbers? From a bullpen standpoint, how deep is Oregon's bullpen? Is that kind of a strength for them or a weakness?
So they have a lot of guys that have thrown, which is good. Also, at the same time, when you look at that, that means that you've had some mistakes there in the middle of the season. They have a few top end bullpen guys. So when you're looking at Bradley Mullen, you're looking at Logan Mercado, who was a starter at one time and now is a closer. And they go through these guys, Ryan Featherston. These guys have pitched a lot of games. You know, they're in the top 20, 26 games range there. So they've thrown a lot of innings. They've gone out there and they've really attacked hitters. The thing is that beyond those three guys, there's some good arms, but they're a little untested.
That's kind of how I feel about Texas A&M's bullpen as well. Evan Aschenbach's up for kind of the reliever of the year. He's really good for about 12 or so outs in a weekend,
Yeah.
almost kind of like that fourth starter role. Chris Cortez has obviously been electric, I think, in the better half of the year. He has always, again, struggled with command issues. So I know that it's kind of starting to turn into a thing where you should start to trust him more. But I think every A&M fan remembers kind of his walk fest from last year. He's a guy who throws 100 with a devastating slider. Lafayette's coach compared him to Roberto Ozuna, and he said it wouldn't surprise him to see him pitching in the major leagues next year. Um, so he's going to be somebody that Oregon really kind of has to wait out. And if he's on, I think that really is going to be one that they struggle with. But outside of that, with Texas A&M, that's where we kind of go into a little bit of the unknown territory. Tanner Jones and Justin Lampkin, one of them I think is going to start that quote unquote if necessary game in Game 3. Sloshu's mediocre for Tanner Jones's, and Justin Lampkin lasted a third of an inning in the ninth. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there. Weston Moss has been good at times. Josh Stewart's kind of more of a specialist. But again, if you're Texas A&M, I think that the best chance that they have is sweeping those two games
Yeah.
because in that third game, like Oregon's going to be playing with house money at that point. It's going to be really exciting to see. And again, if you're Sloss, you're going to try and do everything that you can to win those two games as fast as you can.
A&M wants to go out and win that Friday or the Saturday game, right? They got to go out beat RJ Gordon. That's what they got to do. Because if they drop that first one, then they got to go up against Grayson Grinsell, the big tall lefty for Oregon. That's not the position they want to be in, having to win that one and use their bullpen guys that they have, and then go into that Sunday game and not really knowing who they're going to throw. Oregon knows who they're going to throw. They're set up. They have their spots. They already have their bullpen guys ready to go. As long as there's not a complete blow up by one of these starters on Saturday or Sunday, Oregon is really set with the arms that they want to use this weekend.
Yeah, and again, I correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like A&M has the advantage on Saturday when they go with Ryan Prager. I think that they have the advantage on
Yeah.
Sunday when they go with Shane Steho. But that Monday game, I feel like it completely flips to Oregon, and Oregon's going to be the betting favorite to kind of win that Sunday game.
I would agree with that statement. I think Saturday's a lot or Sunday's a lot closer than we think. Obviously,
Yeah,
Prager is
definitely.
so good on Saturday, right? RJ Gordon's just gonna have to try to keep with them. They're gonna have to try. That might be a 2-3 ball game in that one. That could be a pitcher's duel to that one. The Sunday game, I believe, is going to be a little bit more even than people are believing right now. But those guys haven't seen Grayson Grinsell throw a lot this year. Again, with a 3.82 ERA, and he's been really good as of late. He's been sub 3 for the last 2 months.
Yeah, and he's been tremendous. I think he's a big reason why Oregon has had a lot of success that they have.
Yeah.
Brings us into kind of our next segment. You mentioned that they're going to need to have starters that get long outings. This Texas A&M offense, it seems like they always want to throw that one big punch, get a 5, 6, 7th run inning really early, and then kind of go to bed there. I think that that's going to be something that Oregon's going to really have to limit because I think in one of these three games, Texas A&M is going to explode for 5 runs in an inning, and if they can
Yep.
limit it and go outside of it, I think that Oregon kind of sets up. Um, Mark, can you kind of walk us through this Oregon lineup? Who's kind of the names to circle? Who do you think's a little bit underrated, and then who's kind of that spark plug team first kind of guy?
So I know people are like looking at the stats. They've been going through it here lately. If you have not seen what Mason Neville's been doing lately, he has 14 home runs the last month and a half. This guy has been on fire at the plate. Now, his average was so far down to start the season, Jake, that he's had to really work his way back up. He's right around 250 right now, but he's up to 16 home runs and 42 RBIs. He's been that kind of producing bat for the Ducks right now. They have Jacob Walsh, who's one of the best power left-handed hitters and first baseman in the country that nobody really talks about because Travis Pastrana was so good this year that he didn't get the love. He was my guy that I said was the dark horse for winning the Pac-12 Player of the Year. He had 18 home runs. He now has the career record for Duck home runs. He has the season record for Duck home runs. He's been really, really good. He's not great against lefties. He's not great against lefties, and that's a tough matchup for him on that Sunday. But if he can get something going on Saturday, he might be the guy you lean on. Other guys that they have, they've been doing. Drew Smith has been just a constant. Started every game for the Ducks. He's played every single game. He's played second. He's played third. He's been all over the place. Guy hits 315. He just gets on base and he does the little things that you just love to see. And then Jeffrey Hurd, transfer in, outfielder, DH. This guy has been all over the place. He's got a few home runs. He's hitting 300. He's done a lot of things. He's an experienced guy that they're going to lean on and just love having in that lineup. And then, of course, the linebacker, Bryce Betcher, starts linebacker for the Ducks. He's also going to play some center field. He's been really good lately. He's got 12 home runs. He's slugging over 500. This guy can put the ball out of the ballpark in any size ballpark. He is huge. If you haven't seen him, Jake, he's a massive young man.
I'm excited to kind of see this Oregon one. The ballpark, I think, usually plays small, but last weekend, I think with the humidity and everything, it really kind of played big. So it'll be interesting to see if we kind of get a little wind going. I mean, A&M really kind of makes this ballpark feel small. Obviously, they broke a school record for home runs. I think the one thing that really jumped out to me in Oregon when I was going in and watching the film is how well they field. They seem to have a lot of range up the middle. They steal a lot of hits
Yeah.
that way, and they make every play that they're supposed to. I really didn't see a ton of errors from them. They had a nice bare hand play in that championship game against Santa Barbara. I think that's going to be the one thing that we can really kind of track because I think that was where the game kind of changed for A&M. As Texas had those errors with Jalen Flores that let A&M kind of get back into it, and that's when they kind of got the confidence. That's going to be something to kind of track as well. And then just for Mark users, I'll go through kind of A&M's lineup.
Yeah.
It's I think the best in modern college baseball. They have two stud freshmen in Jace Lavalette, Gaten Grahovic. They have an underrated freshman that kind of flew under the radar but got to play because of playing time, Caden Sorrell. They have the smaller conference going for his last year before draft and Ali Camarillo. They have three smart grad transfers on COVID years with Ted Burton, Hayden, Schott, and then Jackson Appel behind the plate. And then obviously the big fish with Braden Montgomery out there in right field, perennial first rounder. I think he's set to be the highest drafted Texas A&M player ever. They paid a great amount of money for him to be here. Sauce recruited him like nobody's business. So I mean, they're a very, very deep lineup. Gavin Grahovic broke a freshman home run record out of the leadoff spot. Ali Camarillo's been on a tear the last month and a half. It seems like he's probably hitting over 400 down in the 7-hole. Caden Sorrell obviously was the hero last week. He was my vote for regional MVP. He had 2 home runs. So that's gonna be the one thing that I think Oregon. I wouldn't say that they've slid by in the pack, but I don't think that they've faced a lineup that's this deep from 1 to 9. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. Other than the Beavers, but the Beavers, it just seems like it's Bazana and then everybody else kind of goes off of him. And I think that this is just one of those ones where it seems like everybody on the lineup can kind of break out at any point.
I think that it will be the best lineup that Oregon has faced all year. Now, I do think the Beavers are close. I think that they're right there.
Mm.
Both Texas A&M and Oregon State are ranked in the top 4 in the country in hitting, and there's a reason for it. They're both good at all those things. They have superstars on the ball, right? Oregon has faced Oregon State. They didn't do great on that Friday, Saturday games, but they did hold the Beavers down as far as runs total over the weekend. They really did a good job of that. I think you're going to see a little bit of that this weekend, Jake. I think that they're going to hold them down. The one thing they got to stay away from is that big inning from A&M. A&M can get on you so fast. It takes just a little bit of room, right? They get a single, they get a double, and all of a sudden, then it's a home run. Now you're down 3-0, and you just blinked. Like things just happen that fast. It really can happen with that lineup really quickly at A&M.
Yeah, I mean, it always seems to kind of go with like a 3-2 walk where they foul off a bunch of pitches. I mean, Mark, you remember that game in Omaha 2 years ago when they played Notre Dame? And it was like a 4.5 hour game. They were, working walks, working long counts. I think that there's a lot of shades of that team in this A&M team. Obviously, I think that they have more power, but again, at the end of the day, they're still kind of that scene from I think a Bronx Tale, where they lock the door with the bikers. That's how I kind of feel like A&M's offense is they kind of lock the door behind them and say, "Hey, let's get to work here." Mark, before we kind of go, as we're running up on time here, what's your prediction for the weekend? And then give me an Oregon Duck that's not really on everybody's radar that you think could break out.
So, man, as far as the Duck goes, I'm gonna go freshman Maddox Maloney. He's been really good at shortstop. He's only played about half the games this year. He's made it all the way to 41 games now. He came on and he's just really stud. He's been a stud. He's been great defensively, like you mentioned. Defensively, him and Jacob Walsh there at first base. Between him at shortstop and Walsh at first base, those guys are the dudes that really carry this team defensively. Over the weekend, I'm going to be looking out to see what this Duck pitching. If the Duck pitchers can all go over 6 innings, they're in a great position. If RJ Gordon can at least give the Ducks a chance on Saturday and go up against Prager and give them a chance and stay maybe 6, 7 innings, save the bullpen for games 2 and 3, I think the Ducks can take the next two. I think Ducks win Sunday, and I think the Ducks win on Monday.
All right, I'm gonna go A&M in two, just because I think that that's where they kind of set up, and then I'm going to kind of use a little bit of a cop out here for my player to break out because he was the SEC Freshman of the Year, but he had kind of a disappointing weekend. I think Gavin Grahovic has a really breakout one. He's been struggling, I think, the last month. I think SEC teams got a lot more film on him and they noticed a few holes. I know he's been working in the cage a lot on trying to get those fixed. I think that we see kind of a Gavin Grahovic masterclass this weekend. He's the one that I expect to kind of break out.
And here's the thing, we got two great coaches, right? These are two great college coaches right now going up against each other. Another super regional for A&M, a back-to-back for the Ducks there and Wazowski. This team it's set up to be a really good weekend. I know the Ducks were a 3 seed. They had 40 wins, Jake. I don't even think they should have. They probably should not have been a three
No,
seed.
they
They got
they
underseeded.
I get. I kind of like though that they fell into that regional because they got a very favorable three. Because
Yeah,
San
they could
Diego,
have been a
obviously,
two,
they
but
were
they
a,
would have been somewhere out east, right? They would have
yeah.
been a two out
They,
east.
I mean, they got a better draw than I think Arizona, and Arizona hosted a regional.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. And we're talking about, 0 2 seeds made it and 5 3 and 4 seeds made it. So I mean, the fact that we're still in this thing and you're talking about this team, the way that they're playing baseball right now is really, really good. A&M playing good baseball as of late too. I know they struggled a little bit there at the very end of their season. They kind of backed into the postseason, but now they've gotten going again. And this lineup is just scary for A&M.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is. It felt like Schloss was kind of subscribing to that hot, cold, hot theory. They
Yeah. It's
they
my
didn't play
favorite
their best.
theory.
They didn't play their baseball last weekend and still kind of walked away undefeated. I think that this is one where we can kind of see them flex a little bit against a quality opponent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great series. I cannot wait. You're going to be there live, right?
Yep, I'm going to be there tomorrow during the press conference, and then Saturday and Sunday as well. Hopefully, it doesn't get to a Monday because I can't make that Monday game unless it's at night. So that's why I'm selfishly rooting for two. But either way, it's going to be an exciting series. I think it's been a while since A&M's been in a game three in a super regional because I know that the last two times they've been, they swept.
Yeah, it was sweep for them. And then last time 2 years ago they were in Omaha.
Mhm.
I'm excited for either one of this thing. I would love to see either one of these teams in Omaha, and I know you and I will both be there. I'd be pumped to see either one of them. I think Oregon getting there would just be a better storyline. Of course, never been to a College World Series since 1955, but I think A&M is the better team. But I think if the Ducks can somehow, like I said, if RJ Gordon can go on Friday or on Saturday and give them that chance, stretch that game, look out because the rest of the Duck staff is really good on that Sunday and Monday.
Mark, once again, thank you for joining me here on the show, and thanks for having me on your Best Coast show.
Yeah, little Best Coast action for all the West Coast fans. Can't wait. Hey, have fun this weekend watching the games. I know that I'm going to be watching all the games from home this weekend because the closest one to me is College Station, and I'm not making that flight. Not with me going to Omaha in a week from now. So, Jake, have a
Thank-
blast, man. Thanks for joining
See
us
you
again on College
Wednesday.
Baseball Central. I'll see you. I'll see you Wednesday live. We'll see you.